What's up everybody, Manny from Motomillion here and welcome to the SP2 series. As you saw in our last video, we finally got our SP2. We did our first ride. That's an exception because I would never ever ride a bike without the radiator and oil cooler guards, especially these bikes that have the sticky tires on it. So as you guessed it, today we're going to be doing some first mods to the bike. It's going to be the radiator and oil cooler guards. We're going to do the Fender eliminator on the bike. We're going to get rid of these mirrors because the mirrors are pretty much useless. Since we're going to delete the mirrors, the turn signals go away. And we're going to be installing the turn signals on there as well. So let me get started. It's going to be a quick one. I hope so. Let me not jinx myself. So let's do it. I'm going to start off with what I think is going to take the longest, which is the radiator and oil cooler guards. We do have to take all of the fairings off of this bike for this. And we take our fairing bolts off. Try not to lose these plastic washers that are on here. And then I believe this has just the little pieces here. There we go. So this is different on the 22 and upper bikes. Before there used to be Velcro that holds it on. Now they got two tabs on the tank. They got these two tabs. R1M had us spoiled with how easy it is to take out the fairings. Probably the longest part of this job is for the radiator guards is taking off the fairings off this bike. There's a lot of bolts. We got lucky with the other side. The other side came out a lot easier. I think this could be a video on its own, how to take off the fairing bolts off a Panigale V4. So this one comes off just like this. And this is courtesy of the shipping company. Charlie from Ducati Detroit actually called me today saying that the replacement one is coming. If you guys remember the R1M series, we had a little bit of shipping damage on that. And with the V4 SP, this is what we got. But thankfully they're replacing this lower panel. Then when you're taking these things off, just be careful with the foot pegs. There used to be a bolt on this side. That I'm pretty sure of, but I don't see that bolt anymore. So what you do is you grab this, go up, and this comes off, and this comes off. This is new. This tab didn't exist before on the older models. Yeah, it's a pin now. This came off easily, okay. So this side is off. Now you do this, and this is off. And let me show you this. So true, oh, it actually is in here. I was gonna say true Ducati fashion, they don't have the rubber grommet in there, but the rubber grommet wasn't even in place. Now I have more confidence to yank that out over here. You just have to use some manly power. I got smacked in the face by the fairings too. There we go, it's out. And what gave us trouble was this one. On that one, the rubber grommet wasn't in place, so it came out easily. And look at this. This rubber grommet's already torn in here. I guess it was so tight in there. This piece here. Oh well, the fairings are off. Requires a lot of patience. I'm really looking forward to installing an exhaust on this bike. Because if you come take a look through this cluster of wires and everything, you can see the front header is poking. So get to it if you can. So once that's off, there's this little grommet here holding the lower part, and there you go. So this kind of moves this piece forward enough, hopefully to be able to slide in the radiators in here. I want to see if there's anything else holding it. We probably want to take this piece off here too. One thing that I really like about using the radiator and oil cooler guards are when you look from the front of a Panigale V4 or a Street Fighter V4, the whole front is silver because of the radiators. And these guards really cover that silver up with the black. I'm just gonna grab our foamies, cut some strips off of it. One thing I'm gonna show you guys is these foamies on top are a little too thick. And what I'll do is that I'll just cut them in half or so, because there's not a lot of room up there. This really helps with getting everything in place. And then when you put these zip ties on, try to make them face in a way that when you pull, you're pulling away from the bike and not inside the bike, so these tabs face outside. It makes it a lot easier. Top ones are in place. Now we got to do the bottom one. I'm first going to test fit it just to make sure everything is good. Probably bend this a little. So when you get these radiator guards, don't be afraid to bend them or try to shape them in place. You don't want to obviously bend it too much, but one cool trick with the zip ties are you could kind of bend them like this, give them some creases, so that if you want to go behind something, it helps you get that turn. So we got the radiator and oil cooler guard on. Now before we lose daylight, let's see if we can, how far we can get with the install of the mirrors. The mirrors are easy. It's the turn signals that you got to figure out. These are the Rizoma light units that we're going to install. And when you purchase it from us, it comes as a kit, so it has everything. It has the connectors to make it plug and play, has the adapters to install it on the bike, and has these little light unit pieces. These are pretty bright. I'm taking the plug that they give to make it plug and play, and this is the full length of the wire. I'm not going to keep this full length, so I want to chop this right here. Hopefully it is correct. And we're not going to use these plugs. I'm actually going to wire these up myself. Or maybe before that, let's test this thing out first. Okay, let's see if you have contact. So what I did was I cut the loom right up to where it's going to meet the fairing, tighten those after. Now we're going to make this plug and play. But I want to see how much room is there in the front to hide the cables without it poking out in the front. There's actually a lot of room up here, I think. So this kit comes with quick connectors, but I'd rather solder it. You're by no means you're obligated to solder this, but I'm sure some of you guys are going to comment on the soldering job, but hey, I'm just getting practice. We could test it. Yeah, it's working. Lift it a little. Let's test the right side. So you can see this is pretty bright. So as you can tell, it's kind of dark now, thanks to daylight savings. I don't know what kind of daylight it's saving, but it's not that late, but it's dark. So we're going to get to the tail tidy real quick. And luckily it's not too hard. Again, let me not jinx myself by saying that, but so you take the two bolts out, and this should slide right out. They made it easy so that you could actually take it off at the racetrack, and there's one plug here. So you take this plug off. We get this question a lot. You get the tail tidy kit, it has three plugs. It has one here. So we're not done. What you do is that you turn this around and you take these Torx bolts out, and you have your wiring harness hidden in here. And then crack this open like a crab. You see there is a harness that's right in here. And this is your license plate light. And your turn signal lights, one on each side. There we go. So the NRC Fender Eliminator kit has 2 plugs for the turn signals and 1 for the license plate light. And you could run this Fender Eliminator kit in the tucked position like this, or if you want in the standard position, you could run it like this. So once everything is hooked up, I recommend you to just lay it on your rear tire, plug it in, and just test everything. Make sure that the license plate light comes on with the key, which it did. Now we're going right. Now we're going left. It's flashing fast because the front turn signals aren't plugged in. So just to check it, I want to plug one of them in. Just so, there you go. So it's flashing at the right rate. There you go. That's it. Perfect. There you go, guys. It fits beautifully. It feels completely flush with the tail end over here. It looks so much cleaner too. Okay, that's it. So once you have your Fender Eliminator installed, it has 3 plugs, 1 large plug and 2 little plugs, and those are for the holes that are open on top right over here. It depends how you install your Fender Eliminator, obviously, but since we use the tuck position, this is going to cover this hole here, and then the little ones go on the side. One more right here. So there you go. Now it looks clean and flush. As you can tell, it's day 2, and it got too dark last night and we didn't want to continue on. And so we're just going to be finishing up the SP2. What we're going to do is we're going to change the clutch cover now and install our mirrors and our turn signals that we prepped yesterday. What we left off last night was that we did the Fender Eliminator. We have the NRC Fender Eliminator on the bike now. It looks beautiful. And now with better light, we can admire how nice the tail of this bike is looking. I say this on every installation of the Fender Eliminators because we do get a lot of comments. We use NRC because of the safety aspect, and also it looks very clean. Yes, there's smaller stuff that's out there that maybe the turn signals are in the middle, but the whole idea is that this is a proper setup where it's very clean, and if you can tell, the turn signals are completely large and visible, and from any side of the bike that you look at, you could tell if it's turning left or right. And that's for a street bike, you know, that's a big thing for me. And I try to let everyone know when they're making decisions with buying, you know, the Fender Eliminators, to make sure that, yes, you want to make sure the bike looks good, but also consider the fact that, you know, you have these turn signals on a road bike because you want to make sure that other motorists on the road are knowing that you're going to turn right or left. And to me, you know, it looks extremely clean, especially when you look here. These are the details that how it continues on with this little opening here. They look beautiful. So that's it for the Fender Eliminator. I'm going to continue on. We're going to do the fuel cap next. And for the fuel cap, what you're going to need is you're going to need to open it up. And there's 4 bolts in here that hold the fuel cap in place. We get this question a lot with the Ducatis because the bolts don't show. And then when you take off the 4 bolts, people are questioning. They're like, oh my God, you know, I got a fuel cap that has 5 bolt holes and the stock one had 4. Once you're under these bolts, you could just lift off the stock tank, the stock fuel cap. Just remember that this part that has this C shape is facing towards the right of the bike. The Ducati fuel caps and also Aprilia's are in 2 pieces, the fuel cap and the flange. The flange is held on here by the Phillips screws. We have to separate the flange from the fuel cap, and install it onto our new fuel cap by TWM, and then we could put everything back together. So let me show you how we do that. So once you remove all 5, you're going to notice that you could separate this flange from the fuel cap, just like that. So here's your flange, here's your fuel cap. If you take your flange and put your fuel cap on it, you're going to see that it fits with the bolt holes of the flange that we took off. Again, remember this part was facing outward, and we're going to put our flange in place. There we go, so that flange is in place. Now we're going to grab our TWM cap. Again, the same idea, we want to go crisscross. This is the TWM fuel cap. Quarter turn, you press down, turn, open, put it back on. It looks beautiful. One of my favorite pieces, because when I put parts on the bike, I like to see some of the parts when you're riding. I think it's the ones that have the most impact other than the exhaust that you hear. So this is our TWM fuel cap installation, and let's get to the clutch cover now. So now we're going to install our dry clutch cover. This is supplied with the bike. The bike comes with this cover on here, even though it has a dry clutch. It's because I think some countries' regulations do not allow you to run an open clutch cover because there's moving parts inside. The dealers usually do ask you if you want this installed or not. And when Charlie got the bike at Ducati Detroit, we were just on the last minute for the pickup, so we just didn't get him to install it. But I'm going to show you how to install it. It comes with a couple more bolts. So it got 4 bolts. One of them is a short one, and 3 of them are long ones, and I'll show you where these go. So let's remove these bolts, and there's 4 of them that hold it in place. And for those people who don't like the sound of dry clutch, the dry clutch sound is pretty quiet with this cover on. You can't even tell, I think, that the bike has a dry clutch with this cover on it. So there's our STM dry clutch. One thing to note is the dry clutch does generate a lot of dry clutch dust. And if I do this, you're going to see that there is quite a bit of dust already on it from the very few miles that we put on it. And this cover goes just like this. I want to check the bolts supplied are the same length, so I want to use the same length bolts on here. I know we're going to get comments on not torquing these down. This is not something that is, you know, a component of the motorcycle that is like an engine, you know, the moving parts of an engine. Yes, if we're building engines, of course we're going to be making sure that we follow the torque specs or the sequences. But for stuff like this, with experience, you know not to over tighten it, because basically if you do, you're just going to snap the bolts in place. And also, if you note, I'm using a small ratchet. This is limiting the amount of pressure I could even put on it because of the leverage that I get. But if you want to torque them down, I'm sure the torque specs are somewhere. But for my own use and for our use over here, since this is our own bike, we're not going to torque them. Of course, also if we're doing like brake rotor bolts and everything, we do follow the torque specs and everything else. And that goes to show you that I read the comments, guys. So we're good. So there you go. Now we're done with that. We can start putting the fairings back on. We're going to put our Rizoma stealth mirrors and our turn signals, and this should be it. you don't have them installed on the bike, it kind of looks like they're going to stick out much further, but I think this is pretty nice. Now that most of the fairings are back on, I'm going to tackle these mirrors. These stealth mirrors. They look so cool. For a rider like me, they work better than the conventional mirrors. The regular mirrors on these bikes shake so much I can't see out of. And most of the times when I'm geared up, all I see are my shoulders. Yeah, these are shorter. And but what you have to do is that when you're riding, all I have to do is just lift up my elbow and I get a pretty good view of outside. And they practically just go right in place over here. I'm just gonna go find the grommets that we have. And they use the stock bolts, let's see. So the Rizoma mirrors are on. The final piece that we've got left is the battery cover. Let's grab our battery cover. I'm gonna bring this stand down. That's it. We got one more thing we're gonna install since this bike is brand new. We're gonna install the Shieldertron instrument cluster cover on this bike. And you wanna probably do it as soon as you can because you never want that thing to get scratched because it is an expensive piece to replace. But before that, let's do this. Let's start the bike. So let's see if we can hear the difference between the dry clutch cover without that cover on there. Yep, it does sound like a dry clutch now. And I'm amazed how good of a job that factory clutch cover does with keeping it quiet. And let's check the turn signals to make sure that they're not hyper flashing. So I'm on the right and left. Beautiful, so there's no hyper flashing. And you could see how bright these NRC signals are. Let's put the 4-ways on. And even these, I'm impressed by these little LEDs in the front. It almost hurts to look at them, like directly stare at them because how bright they are. So that's perfect. Now let me just grab my screen protector, get that on there, and this bike will be ready to ride. So here's our screen protector, guys. And it comes with the whole kit. And there's 2 in here just in case you mess one up. It has the wet wipes, the little microfiber cleaner, has a squeegee, and this dust absorber. This, what you do is, this is a sticker. Basically, if you see any big dust pieces, you could just stick it on there and take it off. So when you do this on your phone, the trick is to do it in the shower. Turn the hot water on, make it super steamy. That way there's no dust particles running around. Unfortunately, we don't have a steam room big enough to fit this bike in it. That would have been the ideal way to do it, but I think we could manage. So one side says back, the other side says front. And let's try this. So take the back off. This is one of those satisfying things to squeegee out those air bubbles. Also turn on your screen. There we go. It's pretty clear, crystal clear. So there you have it, guys. That's the first episode of the SP2 series where we installed some parts on our bike. We did get rid of that fender on the first episode. I think on the R1M series, that was one of the things that we got the comments the most about, was that fender. That's off. And on the next episode, we're going to be heading up to the dyno to get the stock power figures of this bike, because we have an exhaust already ready to install on this bike and a brand tuning flash. But first, I want to get the stock baseline figures, then we'll install the flash and the exhaust and get our our final power figures, because I don't think we're going to do much more in terms of power for this bike. But if you have any suggestions or comments on what we should do to this bike, I would appreciate it if you guys leave them in the comments down below. We haven't finalized all of our plans for this bike. We do have a few things that we've never seen done before that we really want to do on this bike, but until then, we're open to suggestions. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, guys, see ya.